Let's bring in Adam Boehler. He has twice traveled to the Middle East to negotiate with the Taliban, including a meeting with Mullah Baradar, the man who's expected to become the Taliban's next president. Adam, it's great to have you on the show. You've got some great insight for us here. I'm fascinated because you say that you generally found while you were talking and negotiating with the Taliban that they tend to do what they say. And yet they say that, that they're going to be a more peaceful Taliban. And some of the things we've seen on the ground do not jive with that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the key when you're negotiating with a terrorist group like the Taliban is, make no mistake, diplomacy alone doesn't work. You need to have the force behind it. And the big difference now versus before when we were negotiating is that we had that force. I mean, people knew that we took out the #2 guy in Iran with Soleimani. The Taliban knew that. And so the key in negotiating with a terrorist group like this is to have the carrot and the stick. You need both. And that's what I'm worried about right now from an execution perspective, is we're out, we're pulling out. That doesn't give you leverage to have real discussions.
Adam, I believe we've got some pictures to show our audience of you with members of the Taliban. You have a first-hand look at what it is like to speak with them, to interact with them. You've watched the coverage now for days of what is unfolding there in and around the airport. What do you want to tell us about this group?
I'd say, number one, it's hard to watch. Like every American, it's hard to watch. We, as the United States, have a commitment to Americans, and we have a commitment to those that help us. So that's difficult. And what I would say, bipartisan view here, is that our time being in Afghanistan couldn't extend another 10 years, 20 years, a year. It's in the execution that there's an issue. I would say that in terms of negotiating or discussions with the Taliban, I'd say on one side, they are a disciplined group that's regimented, and you can have discussions. The other side, it's a very tribal organization. During some of the discussions, one of the guys that had a larger beard was, I don't know if he was sniffing or eating his beard during the time. There was another guy that, was picking his nose during and put his hand like that. You can pretty much tell when someone's picking their nose, even if they do that. So keep in mind, it's a militant group, but it's a tribal group. And in this region, tribal groups respond to diplomacy when there's a strong hand too. You need both in order to make an impact. But I found, that there was a possibility to have discussions, but only if you have the strength behind it.
I want to play this soundbite because this, Adam, is a trapped Afghan official on the Taliban, and he's talking about the claim that they are now peaceful. He says it's all for show. Watch this.
Over 2,300 American soldiers sacrificed their lives in the conflict in Afghanistan. We also had over 1,100 soldiers from our NATO allies, Brits, Canadians, the French, the Germans. All of the folks who came to our defense after 9/11 invoked Article 5 of the NATO Charter and participated in our war in Afghanistan. There were sacrifices made all around, and yet they were the last to know. It was a shameful way to treat our allies.
Yeah, that was the wrong soundbite, but I guess the point, what I'm trying to get to is there a disconnect? You talked about how the leaders of the Taliban, they're seeking legitimacy. Is there a disconnect between the leaders and the militants in the field who might be doing harm to people? And is there a way for the leaders to control those who might be out and about in Afghanistan doing wrong?
I think the disconnect here is when we're the United States of America. And we're a strong nation, we're strong internationally, and that's one thing going from country to country I can give you assurance of. We have a lot of strength. When we leave, we don't leave with our tail between our legs. We leave from a position of strength on our terms. And so the Taliban, again, it's a tribal area. They're a militant organization, a terrorist organization. They're going to respond to strength. And so first and foremost, you can't have real discussions and expect a terrorist militant group to engage and to do what they say if there's nothing to assure accountability. We need to assure accountability. They need to know that we have the strength and the willpower to follow through if they don't do what they say they will. So,
Adam, they're armed to the teeth now with U.S. weaponry, sniper rifles, Humvees, helicopters. They're in a whole new world now in just days.
Yeah, but make no mistake, again, we're America. And so if we want to be there and we want to be strong, then we can be. So the key is, I mean, we're not going to stare it on the face of the Taliban and blink. That's a mistake. We're the U.S. of America. So I think the key here is remembering our strength and our ability, and we can't leave like this. We cannot leave people that supported us behind. That's not okay. So those images.
I think that's where the question of will comes in. You're talking about the strength,
100%.
the ability, the capability, which we know our military has. But
Yes.
Is this White House moments from now going to show the will?
That's exactly correct, which is what is the difference between when we were engaging before, there was no question about the will. We blew up a car where a massive terrorist, Soleimani, was riding with someone from Iraq planning attacks on U.S. troops in U.S. bases. And what did we do? We blew that car up because that's what we needed to do. The Taliban, the region saw that. The entire region, the Taliban saw that. So when we're discussing with them and we're negotiating, they know that there's muscle and willpower behind that. We still have that muscle, of course. We're the United States. And then the question is the willpower there? And are you leaving on your terms with strength, or are you leaving with your tail behind your legs? I don't think it's too late. It's never too late for us. But it's time to say, listen, there was an execution failure here. Fine. Let's rectify that failure now, and let's show our strength.
And if you were negotiating this, you would tell the Taliban, look, we're going in. We're going to go in. We are going to get every American out, and we are going to get every one of our Afghan partners out. And that's the way it's going to be. If it takes us a month past the August 31st deadline, then so be it.
And God help you if you stand in our way.
Yep.
Got it. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
Best in the business. Great stuff. Thank you all. Let's go back to Adam Boehler, who has twice traveled to the Middle East to negotiate with the Taliban face-to-face with its leaders. Adam, I just want, first of all, you heard the president's speech. I want your reaction.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the American ethos is no person left behind. And that doesn't apply just to American citizens and our troops, but it applies to allies and people that stood up for us. And so one of the questions I ask from this is, it's good to have words and good to talk about how we're working with the G7 and other countries, but this is a crisis. And in a crisis, you take action and you do what you need to do. And so one of the concerns I had just listening, there was a reporter that asked about a translator and the translator's wife and their 3 children. And the answer was, they should call us. Call us how? Do we have a 1-800-AMERICA number? I wasn't quite clear the answer. The answer should have been, this is our operational plan to get the U.S. citizens and our allies out. And so, one thing in a crisis, and let me use COVID as an example. In Operation Warp Speed, we threw out convention, and that's why we were successful. We ran something called Operation Airbridge, where we had hundreds and hundreds of FedEx and UPS planes airlifting PPE from Asia to the United States. That's not normal. So the key here is, why is it taking so long on the passport side? We've added 20 people from state on the passport. Well, last I checked, we're the United States of America. 20 people from state isn't a lot of people. What are we going to do now that, let's call a spade here. We bungled the execution of this. It is what it is. How are we getting out of it?
And he says he's going to get every American home. Still has no number how many are there. But he did say this about the Taliban, Adam, that the White House is in constant contact. Listen.
And the only country in the world capable of projecting this much power on the far side of the world with this degree of precision is the United States of America. We've already evacuated more than 18,000 people since July and approximately 13,000 since our military lift began on August the 14th.
So he said just then that they are in constant contact with the Taliban, working to ensure civilians have safe passage to the airport. Wanted to see what you thought about that and whether or not you believe that the messaging the Taliban is giving this White House is believable.
I don't believe it's believable because, look, I never trust a terrorist organization. At the end of the day, the Taliban is an army of militants. And so the way you negotiate with an army of militants, you can have discussions. But what's the force behind that? And what I'm concerned about is, where is the belief that we will execute and back up if we're totally out of the country in 10 days? I don't see how that's working. So you can negotiate with a militant army if you have strength and you can execute on that. When they see what happened to Soleimani in Iran. They know what will happen if they don't execute with what you say. But that's my concern, is where is the backup behind our words?
And I think it's a valid concern. Boehler, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.